Hey, Julie.
Hey Claire, I like your curly hair.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, friends and listeners. Today, we're going to talk about, as we're kind of back to school, heading into transitioning of the seasons from summer into autumn. This is traditionally labeled as flu season.
Well, it's gotten pretty long. That flu season's gotten pretty long. I'm just
We've
gonna
had
say,
flu season for the past several years.
like,
Um,
okay, yeah, yeah. I
but today, we'd like to just share a little bit of our own experiences with healing our own bodies. And that may sound a little crazy, but Julie and I come from a place we truly believe that the earth has everything that we could possibly need to live vibrant and healthy lives. And we have the power within ourselves to change and affect our body in the ways that are helpful.
well,
So
and allow our bodies to operate as divinely intended. The changes that have occurred within our body are for reasons that were not natural to us.
mhm. And the word disease, which y'all have
Right.
maybe heard the breakdown of dis-ease, disease just simply means that something in the body is out of balance. And when we get messages from the body, what would it look like if we simply approached it as that, as a communication from this divine holy vessel saying, hey, something's out of balance here, instead of maybe we go into a diagnosis or we go into fear, and then we create stories around what that means for us and for our health. So Julie's got a great breakdown of the word diagnosis, which has been super helpful for me. I'd love to hear that from you again, Julie.
So this came in from my meditation, channeling, higher selves, whatever you want to call it, and the word gnosis is to know. You know, the Gnostics, the ancient Gnostics, some believe, Jesus, the Essenes were Gnostics. Anyway, it means to know, and we're all born with that knowing. Diagnosis, my guide said, you as the human begin to die of the diagnosis. Once you begin to know what an outsider tells you in that moment that you have, you come to believe that and you create that reality within your system. So when you go to get a test or a scan, and they do a whatever, a CT, a scan, and they capture a snapshot, one instant in time, and in that one instant you get a diagnosis. You have whatever you have. Let's just call it the big C word because that seems to encapsulate so many situations right now. Once that someone is told you have cancer, what is it? What do? You go into fear. It's, oh, how long, what stage, and then it's the chemo and the radiation and what's going to happen, and all of a sudden you're on a path somewhere that you were not before someone captured this moment in time. And my guides also said, why is it that when a human feels something not ordinary, pain, discomfort, something very different, they assume something's going wrong and run to a doctor instead of assuming something's going right. Your body is trying to eliminate something or course correct or right something that's gone wrong due to food or whatever. I mean, a variety of things. Cellular breakdown due to aging, all kinds of environmental factors. So we have a lot to say.
We have a lot to talk about today. So, first, I do want to say we are not doctors, although it'll be interesting what we share a little bit later, come back to that. But what we mean by that is that we are not authorities on your body. Only you are the authority on your body, and then whomever else you have given that authority to. So, whatever we're sharing today is based on our own experiences. Our bodies may be very different than yours. Julie and I's bodies are very different. So things that have worked for her maybe not work for me, and vice versa. So this is a grand experiment. If you can look at life as a grand experiment, um, try what works for you, and approach it like an experiment. Write down your observations, notice what's happening, and if something's working, great, and if it's not, throw it out. So
And first of all, you have to have the belief that your body has the divine intelligence to heal itself. Without the belief, without the knowing, the gnosis, you're going to have mixed results. And that belief, even for myself, and I've had a variety of issues present themselves to me to be healed through me. And I believe in my body's ability to heal. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe, but there have been moments where I'm like, ooh, this is getting a little sticky. And I get into a little bit of doubt, and that will only delay the healing process. And so, for those of you who have believed and followed and been led and guided by Western traditional medicine, and it's been successful for you, but you're curious about this, maybe have one foot in each camp for a little while, until you start to feel confident, comfortable, capable in navigating that transition from outsourcing your health and healing to bringing it back to you.
yes, absolutely. And this is in no way shitting all over Western medicine. There are absolutely beautiful advances, um, drugs that have allowed people with devastating illness to live beautiful lives. And so what we're asking is for you to just have an open mind, and of course find what's best for you. And Western medicine, we'll get into a little bit later, but it's largely responsive, it's reactive to emergency. Western medicine is wonderful if you break an arm, if you have to go into the ER. Western medicine is not great at preventative measures that lead to health and wellness. And so that those are some, we got to find the balance, right? So
And additionally, I have people in my family who have been on medications for an extended period of time, whether it's due to thyroid dysfunction, um, you know, mental health issues related to autism, and sometimes it takes 10 or 15 or 20 or 25 years to then see the effects of this medication. And oftentimes, the medication that's used to treat an existing problem without getting to the root cause of the presentation of the dysfunction in the body, you put a medicine on to ameliorate the signal, the effects, to turn the volume down. The underlying condition still exists. Now you've suppressed the response to that, and oftentimes create another issue in the body. So that's something that, I have, I'll just speak to one of my sisters because I think she'd be okay with that. She had Hashimoto's, which is, actually an autoimmune disease kind of attack on your thyroid. And they never got to the root of what was driving this. And she went on a medication, Synthroid, and was on that, which never really changed the symptoms of the Hashimoto's. She was still cold. She still struggled with weight, kind of just was sluggish, harder to get going. But the Synthroid kept her levels where they should be when they, checked it out. Well, started breaking bones in the last couple of years, and now has been diagnosed with osteoporosis. And the minute she said that to me, in my brain, I heard the medication Synthroid as related to osteoporosis. So that I kind of dug into that. Sure as shit, Synthroid, after an extended period of time, causes osteoporosis.
oh shit.
So you without getting to the root cause of what your body is trying to tell you isn't working in your life, you continue doing that thing, eating or breathing or whatever, interfacing with something that's causing you harm, you continue doing that, but you have this medicine that says, no, everything's okay. Everything's okay.
And Julie, that reminds me of the book that was introduced to me several years ago called The Body Keeps the Score. And a lot of people know about this book now, but it was really like revolutionary when it came out because it's a medical doctor who also uses psychiatry and studies, and he uses these results and really shows from a scientific perspective how the body is not an isolated island. It is directly connected to our emotional body, our mental body, our thoughts, our energetic body, like what we're exposing our energy to, and our spiritual body, our understanding and connection with something bigger than ourselves.
Do you know, you said this, and do you know that I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Vessoul van der Kolk.
Yeah, that's the author of the book. Yes.
And actually, I had dinner and spoke at something in Chicago, a convention, a professional convention in Chicago. And this all occurred because he happened to be visiting a treatment center. This is when I'm not going to name the treatment center. And I think this was early 2000s. And I had a session in which traumatic memories came to me again that I had repressed because they were not great. And the next day, I was covered with contusions, bruises, lesions all over my body. Vessoul happened to be at the treatment center when this all unfolded. And so he spoke to me about the cellular memory. And my body had not released that trauma because I suppressed it, similar to taking a medication that just suppresses it. And in the moment that my spiritual, emotional self caught up, my physical body was allowed to release all of that it had suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to heal.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, if you're interested in here, and the reason I love the book so much is because it's so many stories like what Julie just shared, like so much evidence of at a cellular level, the body holds on to these frequencies of experience and memories. And so simply treating the body at one level is not usually going to cut it. And so when people are having a lot of autoimmune or fibromyalgia, like pain in the joints, pain in your bones, so much of that can be traced back to doing the really hard work of bringing up emotional trauma, unresolved issues around anger, frustration, abandonment. So
shame. I mean, autoimmune is your body is attacking itself. Okay. Your body is breaking down itself. And if you think about your thoughts when you are holding onto those frequencies of I'm not good enough, I suck, oh my God, I'm never going to get a good enough job, I'm not going to find love, why was I such a bad daughter, I was selfish, I should have been a better mom, you are attacking yourself. You are attacking yourself. And so it would be no surprise then that your body is going to reflect that in some way.
And from traditional Eastern medicine, specifically Chinese medicine, they understand that specific emotions are held in different areas of the body. And it's like grief, for example, is held in the lungs. And so if we're going into flu season, okay, especially if we're thinking about the virus that we were all dealing with for the past several years, what does it do? It attacks the lungs. And so could we look at that as an opportunity to look at our own lives and say, where am I still carrying grief? What still grieves me that maybe if I bring it up and I just look at it, I might decide I can let that go. Guys, that affects your lung health. It may sound crazy, but this is ancient knowledge that our current medical system does not acknowledge.
Well, and to add to that, Claire, even if you think about sore throat, what are the ways in which you use your throat in angry, harsh, ways, and what are ways in which you suppress expressing yourself,
Yeah.
and maybe don't speak up to what you believe to be true. I don't know about a lot of what's going on. These are times that are very heated, very divisive, and it's very difficult to speak your truth and your beliefs out loud without offending or inflaming. And it's walking that line between speaking with integrity and kindness and compassion, your truth, even though it may be completely opposite to the other. The ability to do that will keep your throat clear, will
Mhm.
keep it just free of that stickiness or that, that abrasive feeling.
Yeah. So
So,
love to
what?
share some of our personal stories of just, I don't know, issues with our bodies that have taught us something, I think, and we can kind of just, for listeners, break down our mental process, our emotional process, and the physical process, because those are kind of the three major bodies that I think at least generally people understand these are connected. I hope. So I'm gonna just jump in with my story of COVID, if that's okay. Um, so something one of my former mentors, energy mentors, taught me is that when we allow there to be a disruption in our field, whatever that looks like, we may not feel the effects of that disruption for days, possibly even weeks, as it's working it. Because if we think about ourselves as surrounded by all of these layers of bodies, okay, the physical body is the most dense. It has to go through the mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic to get to the physical body. And so as a disruption is maybe working its way down all those layers, it might finally be expressed in the densest layer of the body much later. So I was visiting a friend in California, and it was kind of at the height of the pandemic. Um, and I was there for 2 weeks. So I don't know about y'all, but me visiting any friend for 2 weeks is probably not going to be a good idea for various reasons. One being that I love being home as much as we travel. I love being home. I love having my alone time. I love having my own space. My friend was very aware of this. They did everything they possibly could to give me that time and that space, and we did a great job on some of those levels. But it was too long. It was just too long. Like, I don't need to be around anyone for 2 weeks other than my husband, right? And even then, I'm like, Lord, I would love my own separate apartment. Yeah. Yeah. So I started to I started to feel that breakdown of me being able to hold my vibration of love, acceptance, non-judgment. And my friend and I have some different views, some different ways of expressing ourselves. I love her very much, of course. But being in her field for 2 weeks, I wasn't able to hold my vibration. And so I did start to go into some judgment. We had some conflict, and judgment, if you want to break down your field, judgment is probably one of the best ways to do that. It is toxic to the body. So I was aware of it, but it was like I was in this space and I couldn't get out of it. If I were at home, I would have just removed myself from the situation, right? But I wasn't. I was all the way across country. So it was a wonderful trip. We had great times. It was also a really tough trip in a lot of ways. And I came home, and sure enough, 3 days, 4 days later, I start showing symptoms in my body of the COVID and
COVID.
the COVID.
The
And
COVID.
I got home from being gone for 2 weeks. I got home from California on a Thursday. My husband and I left for a family reunion with his family in the mountains of North Carolina the following Monday. So I essentially had 3 days to like recalibrate. It was a pretty intense trip. I'm not even going to go into all those details, but I was like, what just happened? What, our our friendship was affected, and I was trying to deal with a lot of these things. And the very first day of this vacation, and I knew I shouldn't have gone on this vacation. But what am I really going to be that daughter-in-law who's like, I'm not feeling like my energetic vibe is a place where I can be around family. But I should have. I damn sure should have. But I didn't. Didn't want to offend anyone, didn't want to upset anyone. So we go. I start having symptoms. I'm in bed the first night, stay in bed the remainder of the week. I was like, oh, I didn't want to get, all of that. I didn't want to get a diagnosis, but we were definitely staying away from everyone. And by the end of that week, I was so, so, so sick. Finally, and then my husband started getting symptoms. We decide to go home. And then, like, I think it was probably a full 2.5 to 3 weeks. We had horrendous symptoms. It was fucking awful. Didn't leave our house. One of the reasons it was so long and drawn out is because I was in so much self-judgment. Because in my mind, I was on this spiritual path. I shouldn't have gotten sick. There was something wrong with me. I was weak. And so I perpetuated the expression of this sickness because I just couldn't get out of this like self-condemnation. And I was thinking back over my trip and just replaying everything and how I should have done things differently, blah, 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 blah. At this point, there were other things that happened. My friend and I are not talking. Oldest friend in my life, by the way. So that's deeply devastating. So I'm grieving. And I'm having this illness that's settling in my lungs. So of course, Julie and other friends are like sending me all this stuff. I'm listening to healing frequencies. I'm taking my tincture. We're taking everything that we could naturally. And finally, obviously, we got better. But as I was kind of in my sickness, I was drawing some cards one day and I drew from the archetype deck death. And I was like, it was like, no, not your physical body. This was the message I received. It was like, this is not of your physical body. This is a death of your ego, of your spiritual ego, the way you were doing things before, the way you were relating to people. This is a death of the way you used to be. And so that created a shift for me. And I really feel that that was kind of when things started to take an upturn in how I was feeling. But it was scary because I wasn't going to go get all the drugs that doctors were offering. I really wanted to do this naturally. And we ended up taking Tylenol because it was just so fucking awful. But otherwise, it was all natural. It was brutal. But I came out of that a different person, and then I kept getting sick once a month for the next 8 months. And that just led to all these cycles of like, okay, I'm in it. I'm letting my body do it. And then it was like, fuck, something's wrong. So there was that continual judgment until it like that mentality and the sickness slowly worked its way out of my system. And so I do look at getting sick differently now. And you were a big part of that too, helping me reframe that. So thank you. So that's my story. Really a journey.
That was a journey, and I remember it well. And it was, yeah, you hate to watch someone you love struggle with sickness of any kind. And I think that's a lot of what motivated us to talk about this. I feel like I have more and more sick people popping up around me. And it's sad, right? And COVID, yeah, sad. But when now it's cancer and some pretty big things. And I've watched a couple people in good friends in the last several years die of cancer, young people. And so that has inspired me to think about health as wealth and how I can build more wealth, which is the health and vitality in my system. So um, I guess I have several stories around my healing, and this may end up being a two-part episode because there's so many things that we can talk about to support your health. But first, we're going to give a little bit of credence to the idea that we can indeed heal ourselves. And oftentimes, sickness, like in Claire's case, comes as a messenger. I mean, it always comes as a messenger, right? It's always a messenger, but it was a big, long message for you, and you gleaned a lot of important emotionally, you released a lot emotionally, but you gleaned a lot spiritually. And so to recognize that there is oftentimes a gift hidden in the illness, and to look at it as, a messenger. So I was, you navigated it well. And that was hard. I remember. All right. So my story, the first healing came in, I think I've talked about, was the throat. I had the 3 tumors and was healed that through sound vibration. And the idea that I could heal myself with sound vibration came in through my meditation and my guides. And actually that information came in a couple of years prior to getting all of this. And so that was really powerful. And I could, even the oncologists at Sloan Kettering were like, wow, whatever you're doing, just keep doing that. So that was kind of the first biggie. The next thing that occurred, I was in Bora Bora riding a motorcycle, which I really had no business doing, and crashed it into a brick wall. It was bad. Flew over the wall. It was not pretty. Landed on the street. Traffic was shut down. Ambulance came. They speak French in Bora Bora, so there was, and I was out of it. And I came to, and they had to take me to this infirmary and whatever, make sure nothing was broken. I had abrasions, the road rash from whatever, scraping myself up. My knee was so swollen. And the doctor, but English he was speaking, he's talking to my sister, and he's like, your sister, very, very resistant woman, because nothing was broken. And they couldn't believe nothing was broken. And I'm like, resilient. I'm not resistant, I'm resilient. And sent me with all these painkillers. And, I was like, the trip's going to be over. It was, going to be this big trip to all these atolls in French Polynesia and blah, blah, blah. It was for my 50th birthday. So it was kind of a big deal. And went to bed that night. And my sister was, caring for me, getting ice, going to get, painkillers and clean all my wounds and dress everything. I woke up the next day, 5 a.m. And I'm like, I feel fine. Like, oh my God, like I feel fine. Nothing hurts. So I decide I'm going to pull down my bed covers and like, look at this and look at this and look at that. There's nothing. There's not a scratch. I mean, this was open. There's nothing. And I'm like, so my sister wakes up and I'm like, everything's gone. And at this time, for a couple of years, I've been talking to her about the messages I was getting. And she's like, I think my sister is going fucking crazy. And every day I'm like, I got this message about this, and I got this message about this, and blah, blah, blah. And so my sister, bit of a doubting Thomas, for many years, just says, dude, you're freaking me out. You're fucking freaking me out. I mean, she was just shook. I mean, What the fuck is going on? I'm like, I don't know. I don't really know. And it was interesting because we were on this small boat to go to all these little islands. You have to be on a boat. And I would say small, there were like 100 people, but I was like the talk of the boat because everyone had heard about the woman who was in the motorcycle accident, blah, 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 blah. And the next day I'm out on the deck and it's like, what? I mean, nobody, I'm like, I know, right? It's just crazy. So it was crazy. So that was another time. Inexplicable, and I didn't do anything. So one time I did something, the chanting and all that. Second time, it was the universe saying there is a divine intelligence encoded within you that knows how to heal you. I didn't do anything.
Hmm.
Third time, my foot was slammed in my door. The door, and I took a picture of my foot, and I hope we can include that in whatever the links. And it's a timestamp, and it's bad. It's right on, the bone that meets your big toe. This thing, you can see it, black and blue. It's starting to swell. I really couldn't walk. I had to kind of drag myself because I was barefoot. And I heard, you can heal this. Use Reiki energy to heal this. And I was like, okay. And so this occurred at like 8:15 at night. And so I tried to pull in that light, and that, I view it as like a white light. And sometimes there's a little blue in it because I think blue is very healing. And I just activated, my chakras in my hands and kind of sent that vibration to my foot until I could feel the pulsation from my hands. Went to sleep, took a picture the next day, nothing, not a sign of anything. And then I started to really believe in this intention and this activation of energy. And so that was super powerful. Then what started, I guess what was next was some skin cancer stuff. So I had skin cancer on my leg that was diagnosed, I don't know, probably 2015. And they gave me what I didn't know at the time, this carrot cream, and I didn't know it was chemotherapy. I'm like, I'm the only fucking person that went through chemo and didn't get a casserole because nobody told me. That's what I was doing. And I like put this stuff on my leg. You had to do it for 28 days. And this thing turned into a golf ball. It was this black goiter. It was horrible. And at the end of all this, I started getting sick. I was throwing up. And I called the dermatologist and I'm like, I'm throwing up. I'm so nauseous. I'm so sick. And they're like, well, it's chemo. So it like broke down your system. And I'm like, hold please. Nobody said that to me. I didn't even know that. They didn't even tell me. And so the next time something popped up on my body, I knew what this was. I'm like, I've seen this before. And I'm like, at this point, I know I can heal myself. At this point, I don't ascribe to medications that signal to my body that my body doesn't know how to heal itself. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to heal this myself. And it was on my upper thigh, and it presented kind of scaly and scabby, and then it broke open. Like the scab would come off, and it would bleed every day. And then I started getting kind of a little bit of a hole in my leg that was about the size of a dime. And I'm like, ugh, and it hurt. I couldn't sleep on that side, my right side at night. And at this point, I had been tuned into the idea that most diseases in our bodies are of a parasitic nature. And when we think parasite, we're like, oh, worms or whatever. But on this planet, this is a planet where you need a host to survive. It's a parasitic planet. It just is. So a parasite is a microbe. I mean, it's just it can be a virus. It can be a tapeworm or a pinworm or something like that. But I've come to believe that it's a parasite. It's just something, and that my body is bringing whatever is parasitic and not intended for the health of or vitality of my body. It pulls it and isolates it somewhere, and then it's like, here it is. What can we please do something with this? So
Whereas you, sorry to jump in, but if you had gone to a doctor like you did earlier with on your leg, what you were saying earlier is they would have gotten the lab results, the tests back that are capturing a place in the cycle of your body's own healing, but then it would freeze it in time, tell you you have cancer, you believe it, you create your reality, and that becomes what's happening in your body.
right. And additionally, the chemo cream was destroying my immune system,
Yeah.
which is why I then got a terrible cold. I was sick. I had like 3 colds during that thing. And then I finally started throwing up because my body was like, you are poisoning us. You are poisoning us. But I didn't know that. And so I started putting ivermectin on this open wound. And it took 3 weeks of ivermectin every day, and I bandage it and I change the band-aid every day. And what was coming out of this was green and brown, and then it turned yellow. And I mean, it was like, ugh. But it got the amount of green got smaller and smaller, and the brown, and then and I was like, okay, it's healing. I'll tell you what, everything's gone. It's gone. It's completely gone. But I know what this looks like in my body, and I can tell when one's coming on. I mean, I'm very fair, and I believe, there's a lot in our environment that I'm very sensitive to. My body's very sensitive, and so I had another one on my shoulder, and notice where you get your problems in your body. Typically, it's one side or another. There is one side that, for me, I dominate with that masculine energy. A lot of times, it's out of balance. So everything that's happened in my life has been on my right side. Everything. So did it again.
A little timeout. So just to clarify, if for those who this is a new concept, the right side of the body is the masculine, and the masculine is the solar energy, giving, putting out, and then the left side of the body is the feminine, which is the receiving, and all of that. So and then Julie, can you explain why you think the ivermectin worked? Because that's a drug. Why does
Ivermectin is used in mammals to deworm. So and you guys, if you know, I mean, they're gonna vilify. Oh, you're taking horse paste and all that. Every mammal, your dogs, you deworm your dogs, you deworm your horses. We are warm-blooded mammals. Why do we think we don't have any parasites? That seems kind of crazy. So ivermectin, actually, I think it was illegal to prescribe during COVID. I think there were a few like naturopaths that were able to prescribe it, but I believe that you weren't allowed to, and that drove people into trying ivermectin for animals, which is the exact same thing. The dosage and the dosing is different, but it's the same. It's the same formula. So I got some ivermectin, and I'm like, I'm gonna try this. And lo and behold, it's worked.
And it works for your face too, right?
Worked for your face. So and I've come to believe now, I had to take this antibiotic in 2019. I was in the Bahamas, this small island, and I got colitis, which is an infection of the skin. And I was very sick. And I mean, there's no real hospitals there. And I went to this clinic, and they're like, "Oh God, they gave me an antibiotic." And I'm like, "There's nothing else for me to do." Had I been in the United States, I might have had access to my bucket of healing. So I took the antibiotic, and it did something to my system. It made me get, my face would get so hot, like it was on fire. And this happened for like months after I took this antibiotic. And I stopped the antibiotic. Like 3 days into it, I was like, this is doing something really bad to me. And I was having a histamine response. I was like so on fire all the time. So whatever happened, soon thereafter, I developed all these skin issues. And I mean, I had never had, I mean, maybe a zit here or there. I mean, I never struggled with acne or anything like that. So here I am, 50. I think it started when I was like 52. Yeah, because it was like 3 years of like, what is going on with my skin? I mean, it was rosacea. It looked like acne, but I believe it was rosacea, and it would flare up. I got hot, if I ate spicy foods. I pursued everything, I quit, I did these liver detoxes because I thought, oh, it's got to be, I have too many heavy metals in my system. Maybe it's booze. I better stop drinking alcohol. So I stopped drinking alcohol, and I was like, well, fuck that. That didn't work. Nothing worked. And I finally was like, and I wasn't going to go to a dermatologist. I was like, I'm not going to a dermatologist. I know what they're going to do. They're going to give me an antibiotic. I know what that's going to do. Yeah, it will suppress this in some way, but something's going on, and I need to know what's going on. So I don't need to explain how I came to understand that I had these Diodex mites in my face. And I go down this rabbit hole of whatever, rosacea, Diodex mites, and people for rosacea and this perioral dermatitis, which my daughter got after she got bit by a bug. And this bug laid some stuff in her chin when she was in Texas at this wilderness thing. After that, she developed this perioral dermatitis that would flare up. Couldn't get rid of it until she got this cilantro that is between $200 and $500 a tube. She used this. So when this was recently that I was like, this is Diodex mites. I have a parasite, and the parasite is active for 3 weeks. It lays eggs, and then they hatch 3 weeks later. I mean, this is awesome, right? Super sexy talk. So I would be sitting there thinking, oh, it's getting better. And then I thought, well, this is it's hormonal because it expressed itself like a period would. And I'm 55, and I'm like, well, my estrogen levels are probably low. What can I do to boost my estrogen? Let me get some slippery elm and black cohosh and all that stuff. Nothing did anything. Turns out cilantro is ivermectin. It's just labeled something differently, and they can charge for it. So after the success that I've had on the 2 skin cancer lesions, I decide, well, I'm just going to put some ivermectin on my face. And, I'm like, we'll see what happens. It couldn't have gotten much worse. I mean, you guys, for these weeks that, people be like, this wasn't that bad. I'm like, give me a break. You did not see me without makeup on. It was bad. I mean, it was like leprosy bad. I mean, seriously. And I'm not kidding. I'm not. And I didn't take pictures because I didn't want a record of this. I mean, and thank God I was where I was in life. Like, I love myself. I know who I am. So I wasn't like, oh my God, I can't leave the house. I'm ugly. But it was bad. And had this happened to me in my teens, 20s, or 30s, seriously, I would have probably been a emotional disaster. This was just more like, this is really, really unfortunate and really unpleasant. Long story short, immediately my face, I put it on the first night, and my face went from red to normal. And I was like, okay, I am a couple weeks into it now, I'm like, I'm back. It's gone. I mean, it is gone. And I have read all these studies that say you should use it for 12 weeks. Just rub it on for 12 weeks and it'll kill whatever cycles there are. So, ivermectin for the win on so many freaking things on my body. But if you Google search all this, you're gonna see things that are like, oh, you know, these conspiracy theorists and whatever. My cousin is using ivermectin. She has cured her arthritis with ivermectin. My nephew has just started using ivermectin for his Tourette's because there's evidence to support that there are little bugs, little
Huh.
bugs. And if you think about a computer, we say, "Oh, the computer has a bug," and when it creates a malfunction. It creates a malfunction. So we are literally an organic, divine computer. And
Mhm.
so when our body starts expressing itself in these weird ways, right? The idea that it's a bug. So ivermectin, I don't know. I believe in it, and there are a lot of studies that support. I don't know if you go on Dirt Road discussions on Telegram. My cousin turned me on to that because she was like, "Oh, you're into ivermectin. You gotta." And there's hundreds and thousands of people's testimony on curing so much from this. So do with it what you will. I also take it orally. I just go through like I don't know, usually it's about 60 days. I'll take it every day and then I take a couple months off and then I just do it again because I'm like, well, I just want to clean out my system. And there are medical studies that say you can never overdose on ivermectin. There's literally no way to harm or kill the human body with ivermectin, which is interesting because they didn't use it in hospitals during the vid, but they would use remdesivir and other things that had not, as we know, very mixed results.
Well, and it's interesting to me because a lot of like homeopathic doctors that I follow on Instagram, they're all about the deworming of the human body. Like there's a lot of evidence and a lot more awareness happening around what parasites are causing in our body. And when we take things like antibiotics that completely strip the gut biome, then that allows space for these parasites. And there's another word for it's not a parasite, but it's a similar concept. And I can't think of the word right now, but allowing these microbes to live within our body. So there's a lot of information to be found. And we'll maybe link a few of those doctors just so people can check out their stuff.
So these parasites thrive on sugar.
Yeah.
So think about that. And then sugar generally feeds and leads to candida, yeast. Yeast is also exacerbated by heavy metals. So they're all linked. The heavy metals that we're getting, whether, through drinking out of cans all the time, heavy metals, in our environment. Trace heavy metals, if you look into cocoa and you look into some of your nutritional powders, it's a place where heavy metals can be hiding. So you have the heavy metals in our system along with the sugars and then these parasites. It's such a beautiful environment for them to bloom. Like
Yeah.
that candida blooms. I mean, it flourishes in that environment.
Well, I love your stories of healing yourself, and you have other stories of um, healing other people, and of course that's only done if the other person allows that to happen. And um, you may be listening to these stories and a lot of doubt coming up. You're like, oh, I can't believe this. This is ridiculous. And so I think it might be valuable to go back and look at some of the history of how our medical industry has been developed in America. Because when we look at the history of how this has been created, it makes sense that we would think about health and the medical world in the way that we typically do, which is like, oh no, I get sick, something's wrong. I go to a doctor, I take pills, I hopefully get better. But what maybe a lot of you and what Julie and I have been finding is that people in our lives aren't getting better. And there's been an uptick in cancer, there's been an uptick in heart failure and brain
So,
aneurysms, brain tumors.
yeah.
So we don't need to go into why all of that is happening. There's many factors to why that's happening, but I think it's important to look at our history. And then again, we want to come back to, we're not here to convince anyone of anything. But if you have the information, you have the choice. You have the choice to make a different choice for yourself and your body and your own path to healing. So we're going to go all the way back to the turn of the century with John D. Rockefeller.
Uh, and I think his name either conjures all this respect, wealth, power, success, a magnate. So, maybe open your mind to the idea that to garner and amass that much power, it takes a certain personality, a certain drive, to be able to have that much power and influence over literally millions upon millions of lives.
Yes. And our medical system has been intentionally designed. So we're going to take, I think, a little break here, and hopefully I'll come back next week. You can hear part 2 where we dive into the history of the medical industry and how we got to where we are today. And then we're going to include some of our own favorite homeopathic remedies, things that we use on the daily or things that we use in response to the messages that we're receiving from our beautiful bodies. So stay tuned for that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.